So you guys want to turn that average looking lawn into one of the best looking lawns on the block? Stay tuned because I'm going to give you 4 tips on how. Hey guys, it's Jesse with Lawn Life, and today we're going to talk about how we turn that average looking yard into one of the best looking lawns on the block. Now I'm going to give you 4 tips on how to do that. Now if you came to this video looking for the easy way out, this video probably isn't for you. To make your lawn look good, you need to work at it. There's no magic formula where you can just snap your finger and your lawn's just going to magically all of a sudden take care of itself and look super good by just putting one ingredient on it or just not working that hard. You need to work hard to make your lawn look good. So if you're looking for the easy way out, these 4 tips are not for you. Now saying that, let's get right into it. The first tip is going to be mowing. Now what about mowing? You need to mow frequently. Now how frequently are we talking here? I would say once every 3 days. Once every 3 days? Once every 3 days? Once every 3 days? Yeah, right. No, I'm serious. Once every 3 days, you need to go out there and mow. Now, the reason for this is if you mow once every 3 days, you will not break the 1/3 rule. Now, the 1/3 rule says you are not supposed to cut off more than 1/3 of the grass blade at a time with a cut. If you cut off more than that, you're going to start stressing out the grass, which is going to then turn it yellow, just make it start looking like crap because it does not like getting most of its leaf blade cut off. So if you mow once every 3 days, you for sure are not going to be cutting off more than 1/3 of that leaf blade. So get out there and mow frequently. That's the problem with probably with most of your neighbors and maybe what you're doing now. They wait a week, week and a half. The grass gets super long to the point where it needs to be cut because it's looking bad. So they'll go out there, scalp it super short after it grew super long, and then stress out the grass. And then if you do that repeatedly over and over all the way through the summer, it's gonna get worse and worse the more you scalp it because it's just stressing the grass out more and more. So the more often you cut your grass, the more your grass is going to love you for it. Sometimes I even mow once every 2 days, sometimes every day, depending on how fast it's going and how much fertilizer I'm getting. Like in the fall, sometimes I go out there once a day and mow if I had the time to do it. So yes, people look at me crazy, but my grass looks good because of it. Mowing frequently is one of the most important things you can do for your yard. So do it if you want your yard to look good. Now, also make sure your lawn mowing blades are sharp because if they're not sharp and you're still mowing every 3 days, it's gonna stress the grass out because it's ripping the grass instead of giving that clean cut. Now, the way you can tell if your lawnmower blades are not sharp is you'll have like this yellow tinge on top of the grass. Like it almost looks like it's like fuzzy on top. And if you see that kind of white or yellow glare on top of your grass blades, it might be time for your blades to be sharpened. The second step I'm gonna give you guys is watering or your irrigation. Now, for your grass to make it through the summer and look good, it needs water. Now, some of you guys have irrigation systems and some of you guys don't. Now, for the people that have irrigation systems, they have it pretty easy. They just have to dial in how much water they're watering their grass. For the people that don't have irrigation systems, there's a couple things you can do. 1, you can hope for a rainy summer, which barely ever happens. Or 2, you can manually go out there and water your grass. Now, you have a couple options with manually watering. The first option is you can build an above ground irrigation system for not that expensive. I'm not gonna get into how you can do this. There's a bunch of videos on YouTube that tells you how you can make your own above ground irrigation system, but you can get all the parts at Home Depot or Lowe's, and it doesn't cost that much money and plenty of people have done it. So that's one option. The other option is the old school way, which is get out a sprinkler, put it in your yard, wait 20 to 30 minutes, move that sprinkler to another spot, wait 20 to 30 minutes, move that sprinkler to another spot, and water your grass that way. Obviously, it's going to take a lot of work to do it that way, but it's the cheapest option you have if you don't have an irrigation system. Now, how much water should I water my grass? Now, the golden rule here is to water deep and infrequent. A lot of people with irrigation systems like to water their grass every day or every other day. Now, all you're doing with doing that is promoting disease. You want to water less often, but very deep to get those roots to go down and chase the water into your soil. Now, how much water should you water when you are watering deep? Now, you want to aim for around a ½ inch on each watering, and then 1 inch of water each week in the spring and fall. When it comes to the summer months, I would say you'd probably want to aim more for 1.5 inches to even sometimes 2 inches if it's super hot and super dry. Now, if your irrigation isn't doing it for you and you see dry spots coming up, you can see like a blue or black hint in parts of your grass. You probably think something weird's going on, but that's the first sign of heat stress. When you see that blue and black area start to form, it starts kind of small and starts spreading bigger and bigger. You want to get out there and either hand water or make sure your irrigation system's hitting those spots and make sure it's getting enough water. Now, when it comes to watering deep and infrequent, there are some exceptions, and I'm actually one of them. My soil is super sandy, and the reason I can't water deep and infrequent is because that soil layer just does not hold the water. So if I actually try to water deep and infrequent, all I'm really doing is wasting water because the soil just cannot hold on to it. So I actually have to water every other day because I have such sandy soil. You kind of have to figure out what your soil type is and figure out what your grass likes. If you're noticing that you have sandy soil also and those deep and infrequent waterings just aren't working for you, your soil's still getting super dry after a few days, maybe try doing a few lighter doses more often, but just keep an eye out for disease because that's the con that comes with it. If you're watering more, the more you have to look out for that fungus and disease growing in your grass. The third step we're going to talk about is fertilizer. Now, there's a fine line between over-fertilizing and under-fertilizing, and we'll get into that. Now, chances are, if you're watching this right now, your grass probably needs fertilizer. Now, most people think when their grass comes out of winter and in the spring, that's when they really want to get their grass to look good, and they're just going to hit it really hard with fertilizer and make it look super good because it looked like crap coming out of winter. But that's really not exactly what you want to do. Sure, if your grass is underfed right now, you want to give it some fertilizer in the spring and really get it healthy because it's probably starving right now. But if your grass has been regularly fed, you do not want to feed it a ton of nitrogen in the spring because all that's going to do is promote top growth instead of root growth and make it harder for it to get through the stress in the summer months. Now, when you really want to hit your yard hard with nitrogen fertilizer is in the fall. It's almost impossible to over-fertilize your yard in the fall. You want to go crazy with the fertilizer in the fall and get it ready for spring next year. So really hit it hard in the fall. I like to hit it with 3 or 4 pounds of nitrogen through the fall, and then by the time spring comes around, your grass is super dark and is almost ready to go. Give it a light feeding in the spring, and then don't really feed it in the summer, and then repeat the process. You kind of want to repeat that process every year and then get your grass used to loading up in the fall, coming in the spring, give it a little feeding, and then that way it can get through the hot, stressful summer months. Now, the last step in making your grass look good is the weeds. Now, I could talk all day long about weeds, but we're just gonna go over this in a very short way. The most important thing when it comes to crabgrass and POA is to lay down your pre-emergent in the spring and in the fall. That pre-emergent that you lay down in the spring is going to stop all of that crabgrass from forming, and then the pre-emergent that you lay down in the fall is going to stop that POA annua, that yellow grass that looks super lime green that comes up and has seed heads everywhere. It's going to stop that from germinating in the spring. So those are the two that you want to get down right away. When it comes to post-emergent, those weeds that are going to pop up like your dandelions and your broadleaf leaves and your clover and stuff like that, you have a couple options. You can get out with a dandelion picker and pick them by hand and get that root out of there. Or you can hit those broadleaf and clovers or dandelions with a broadleaf weed killer or a clover weed killer. Now there's a ton of other weeds that we can get into. There's creeping Charlie, there's spurge, there's quackgrass, there's weeds upon weeds, and you can go forever talking about them. But for most basic weeds, you can use stuff like Weed Be Gone from Lowe's or Home Depot, and it's going to work just fine. Or the dandelion killer or your clover killers. You can go to Home Depot, buy the cheap stuff, and it's gonna work. So you don't need to overthink this when it comes to weeds. You can get out there, you can hand pull your weeds, or you can use weed killers and kill them. So when it comes to weeds, don't overthink this. If you have a weed that you're trying to identify, there's plenty of websites out there that you can look for weeds in your area and kind of look for those. There's extension offices where you can actually send the weeds into, and they will identify the weeds for you to help you kill those weeds. Get those simple weed killers out there and get rid of the stuff you can. When it comes to those harder to fight weeds, do a little research, see what you can do to get rid of them. Now, the easiest thing for that Poa annua in the crabgrass is to put that pre-emergent down so you don't have to deal with it, and it makes your life a lot easier. Now, those are my 4 steps to get that average looking lawn looking like one of the great lawns on the block. And if you follow these, I promise you're gonna have one of the best looking lawns, easily. If you guys have any questions about any of this stuff, leave your comments below and I'll be sure to answer them. If you guys can please subscribe and hit that notification bell, I would really appreciate it. I want to give you guys as much useful content as I can on this channel. I'll see you guys next time on Lawn Life.